In the distant reaches of space, a region untouched by the Zalorian Empire's iron grip, a solitary Terran exploration vessel drifted through the void. The Oberon, a science ship designed for deep space research, had spent the last 3 years skimming the edge of the galactic rim. Its crew of 70 scientists and engineers had become accustomed to the monotony of their mission, so that they fell into dispassionate silencing, which could be destructive to track down risky hidden elements at the location of their victims. But all of that changed on the day they found it. Commander Elias Vaughn stood on the bridge, his sharp eyes fixed on the central holodisplay. The faint signature of an artificial construct had appeared on their long-range sensors, a massive structure orbiting a dead star. "What are we looking at, Lieutenant?" Vaughn asked, his voice measured. Lieutenant Dana Cross, the ship's sensor officer, glanced up from her console. Her brow furrowed as she parsed the data streaming across her screen. "It's enormous, sir. Over 100 kilometers in diameter, and definitely not natural. The energy readings are faint, but there's still something active in there." Vaughn crossed his arms, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. Humanity had been desperate for hope since the Zalorian invasion began. Earth was gone, its colonies either obliterated or abandoned. If this structure contained anything of value, technology, weapons, or even knowledge, it could be the lifeline they needed. "Set a course," Vaughn ordered. "Approach cautiously. Let's see what we're dealing with." The crew moved with a sense of urgency, their weariness replaced by a flicker of excitement. The Oberon altered its trajectory, its sublight engines humming as it closed the distance to the enigmatic structure. Hours later, the ship entered visual range. The bridge fell silent as the object came into view on the main screen. It was a ring, an immense, ancient ring constructed from a dark metallic alloy that absorbed the faint light of the dying star it orbited. Strange glyphs adorned its surface, glowing faintly with a blue-green luminescence. The inner surface of the ring appeared to house a series of interconnected habitats, though most were dark and lifeless. "It's like nothing I've ever seen," murmured Dr. Iris Kwan, the ship's xenotechnologist. Vaughn leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Any idea who built it?" Kwan shook her head. "The design doesn't match any known civilization in the galaxy. It's old, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years, and whatever material it's made from, it's not in our databases." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Zalorian Empire had prided itself on cataloging the known galaxy, assimilating or eradicating any species it encountered. Yet this artifact had remained hidden, its secrets untouched. "Lieutenant Cross," Vaughn said, "scan for a point of entry." After a moment, Cross responded, "There's a docking bay on the ring's northern hemisphere. It's large enough for the Oberon. Atmosphere inside is thin but breathable. No life signs detected." Vaughn made his decision quickly. "Prepare a landing party. We're going in." The landing party consisted of Vaughn, Dr. Kwan, Lieutenant Cross, and 4 heavily armed Marines. Clad in reinforced suits and equipped with oxygen reserves, they boarded the ship's dropship and descended toward the ring. As they approached, the scale of the structure became apparent. The docking bay alone was large enough to house an entire fleet of Terran vessels. The dropship touched down on the polished surface, its landing struts hissing. The team disembarked, their boots clanging against the metal floor. Around them, the docking bay was eerily silent. The faint hum of energy reverberated through the walls, a sign that the structure's systems were not entirely dormant. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered Sergeant Lopez, one of the Marines. "Stay focused," Vaughn said, his tone firm. We're here for answers." Dr. Kwan approached a nearby console, its surface etched with the same glowing glyphs they had seen from orbit. She activated her portable scanner, hoping to decipher the symbols. "It's some kind of control panel," she said after a moment. "But the language, it's completely alien. I'll need more time to analyze it." Vaughn nodded. "Do what you can. Cross, see if you can map the area. I want to know what's in this ring." As Kwan and Cross worked, the rest of the team fanned out, their weapons at the ready. The docking bay was cavernous, its walls lined with towering machines that appeared to be long dormant. The air was heavy with the scent of metal and dust, a testament to the centuries the ring had spent in isolation. They're commanding that they be shipped back to the U.S. to Axis. Commander, Cross called out, "I'm picking up a faint energy signature deeper in the structure. It's emanating from what looks like a central core." Vaughn's instincts flared. If the ring still had an active core, it could be their key to unlocking its secrets, or their undoing. "Let's move," he ordered. The team ventured into the ring's interior, navigating a labyrinth of corridors and chambers. The walls were adorned with intricate carvings, each depicting scenes of what appeared to be advanced civilizations. Towering beings with elongated limbs and luminous eyes were shown building cities, traversing stars, and wielding incomprehensible technology. "It's like a history book," Kwan murmured, her eyes wide with wonder. "Or a warning," Lopez countered grimly, his grip tightening on his rifle. As they pressed on, the energy readings grew stronger. The corridors opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. At the center of the room stood a monolithic device, a towering spire that pulsed with a rhythmic glow. "That's the core," Cross confirmed, her scanner beeping. "Whatever this place is, that's its heart." Vaughn approached cautiously, his team fanning out to secure the area. The spire emitted a low hum, its surface covered in more of the strange glyphs. "Can you access it?" Vaughn asked Kwan. The scientist hesitated, then approached the spire. She placed her scanner against its surface, her fingers dancing over the device's interface. "There's a locking mechanism," she said. "It's like it's waiting for an input?" "Input?" Vaughn repeated. Before Kwan could respond, the glyphs on the spire flared to life, their glow intensifying. The hum grew louder, resonating through the chamber. "Commander," Cross shouted, "we've triggered something. The ring's systems are waking up." The ground beneath their feet trembled as the entire structure seemed to come alive. Lights flickered on in the corridors, and distant machinery roared to life. Quint stumbled back from the spire, her face pale. "I didn't do anything. It responded to me, like it recognized me." Vaughn's mind raced. The ancient ring had been dormant for millennia, yet now it was responding to human presence. The implications were staggering. Before he could speak, a booming voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in the same alien language etched into the walls. The words were incomprehensible, yet they carried an undeniable weight. "What is it saying?" Lopez asked, his voice tense. Kwan stared at the glowing glyphs, her expression one of awe and terror. "It's a message," she said. "It's a warning." Vaughn's heart sank. Whatever they had discovered, it was far more than they had bargained for. The ring was not just a relic of the past. It was a beacon, and something, somewhere, had heard its call. The crew of the Oberon had always envisioned discovery as a triumphant act, a moment of clarity, of understanding, a step toward reclaiming humanity's future. But as Commander Elias Vaughn and his team stood in the massive chamber beneath the surface of the ancient ring, their discovery felt far more like stepping into a trap. The spire at the room's center hummed with a living energy, the glyphs on its surface pulsating in synchronized patterns. The low, mechanical voice that had spoken moments ago was now silent, yet its echo lingered in the chamber like a ghostly presence. The entire structure thrummed with activity, as if the ring were awakening from a slumber it had endured for eons. "Repeat what you just said," Vaughn demanded, his voice steady but strained. Dr. Iris Kwan, the team xenotechnologist, tore her gaze away from the spire to face him. Her voice was trembling but clear. "The message, it's not just a warning, it's a designation. This structure, this entire ring, it's not a weapon or a habitat. It's a beacon." The weight of the revelation settled over the group. Sergeant Lopez, one of the Marines, shifted uneasily, his grip tightening on his rifle. A beacon for what? Who or what are we calling? Lieutenant Dana Cross, the team's sensor specialist, was scanning the structure's energy signatures, her brow furrowed. "I'm detecting a burst of energy radiating outward in a wide arc. It's moving faster than light, Commander. Whatever signal this thing is sending, it's not stopping here." "That's impossible," Vaughn said reflexively, though he knew better than to doubt Cross's readings. The Zilorians had been the undisputed masters of advanced technology in the galaxy, but this ring was something beyond even their reach. "It's not just a signal," Cross continued, her voice tense. "The ring's systems are aligning. There's an internal mechanism." She paused, recalibrating her instruments. "It looks like it's opening something." "Opening what?" Vaughn pressed. "A spatial distortion, a gateway." The tension in the air thickened. Vaughn stepped closer to the spire, the rhythmic hum of its energy pulsing against his chest like a second heartbeat. He turned to Kwan. "Can you stop it?" Kwan hesitated, glancing between her scanner and the glowing spire. "I don't think so. Whatever processes we've triggered, they're too advanced and too integrated into the ring's core systems. Even attempting to shut it down could destabilize the entire structure." A harsh laugh escaped Lopez. "Great! We came all this way just to accidentally open the door for something that's probably going to kill us?" "Enough!" Vaughn snapped, silencing the Marine. He turned back to Kwan. "If we can't stop it, then we need to understand it. Can you interface with this thing? Get us answers?" "I'll try," Klein said, though her uncertainty was palpable. While Kwan worked, the rest of the team established a perimeter. Vaughn's mind churned with questions, each more unsettling than the last. Who had built this structure? Why had it been left dormant for so long, and why was it responding now, specifically to humans? Cross approached, her voice low so the others wouldn't hear. "Sir, I've been analyzing the symbols we've seen throughout the ring. They're not just decorative, they're functional. They're almost like a language. But what's strange is that parts of it feel familiar." "Familiar?" Cross nodded. Some of the glyphs resembled patterns found in ancient Earth languages, ones that predate humanity's known history. It's almost as if... She trailed off, struggling to find the words. As if humanity is connected to this thing, Vaughn finished grimly. Cross nodded again, her expression troubled. Before Vaughn could process this revelation, Quan's voice cut through the room. "I've accessed a fragment of the ring's data." The team gathered around as a holographic display flickered to life above the spire. The projection showed a star map, its constellations unfamiliar yet mesmerizing. Lines of glowing glyphs scrolled alongside it, indecipherable to all but Quan, who was frantically translating. This map, it's not just a star chart," Quan explained. It's a network. There are dozens, maybe hundreds, of structures like this scattered across the galaxy. They're all connected. Connected how? Vaughn asked. Quan pointed to one of the glowing lines linking the dots on the map. Through these gateways, the ring isn't just a beacon, it's part of an interstellar transit system, a system left behind by a civilization far older than anything we've encountered. The implications were staggering. If humanity could harness this network, it would be the ultimate advantage against the Zalorian Empire. They wouldn't just survive, they could fight back. But Vaughn's optimism was short-lived. Cross gasped, her eyes widening as her scanner emitted a series of shrill beeps. "Commander, I'm detecting movement outside the ring." Vaughn's heart sank. "What kind of movement?" "Shuts. Dozens of them. There's Zalorian..." The team scrambled back to the dropship, their earlier wonder replaced by cold urgency. Vaughn barked orders into his comlink, instructing the Oberon to raise its shields and prepare for combat. As the dropship lifted off and ascended through the docking bay, the team caught sight of the Zalorian fleet through the viewport. Sleek, angular vessels emerged from warp space, their crimson hulls glowing ominously against the backdrop of the dying star. "They must have intercepted the signal," Vaughn muttered. Lopez swore under his breath. "They're like vultures, always circling, always ready to pounce." "We can't let them take the ring," Quan said, her voice urgent. "If they gain control of this network..." "They won't," Vaughn interrupted, his jaw tight. "Not while we're still breathing." The dropship docked with the Oberon, and the team rushed to the bridge. Vaughn took his place in the captain's chair, his eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. "Status report," he demanded. Lieutenant Cross, now back at her station, rattled off the grim details. "We're outnumbered 10-1. Their lead ships are already locking weapons on us. If they deploy boarding parties..." "They won't get the chance," Vaughn said firmly. He turned to the weapons officer. "Prepare the railguns. Target their flagship. Let's remind them why humanity isn't extinct yet." The Vahorn shuddered as its weapons fired, unleashing a barrage of high-velocity projectiles. The Zalorian flagship evaded most of the assault, but one round struck its aft section, damaging its engines. "Direct hit," the weapons officer reported. But the Zalorians were undeterred. Their smaller vessels swarmed toward the Oberon, unleashing volleys of plasma that rocked the ship. "Shields down to 60%, Cross shouted. "Hold the line," Vaughn barked. "Quan, is there any way to use the ring against them?" Queen hesitated. Then her eyes lit up with an idea. "The gateways, if we can overload the ring's core, we might be able to destabilize the spatial distortion and create a pulsed shockwave that could disable their fleet." "It'll disable us, too," Lopez pointed out. "Better than letting them take the ring," Vaughn said. "Do it, Quan." The next moments were a blur of chaos and precision. Quan worked feverishly from her console, relaying commands to the ring's core. The Oberon weaved through the Zalorian onslaught, its weapons firing relentlessly. Finally, Quen shouted, "It's ready!" The core's about to release the pulse. "Brace for impact," Vaughn ordered. The ring's spire erupted with light, its glyphs glowing brighter than a supernova. A wave of energy surged outward, rippling through space and slamming into the Zalorian ships. One by one, their systems overloaded, their engines sputtering to a halt. The Oberon was caught in the wave as well, its lights flickering as its systems temporarily shut down. When the wave subsided, the Zalorian fleet was in disarray. Vaughn's crew cheered as the enemy ships drifted, powerless. But their victory was short-lived. On the view screen, the spatial distortion at the center of the ring continued to expand, its edges writhing like a living thing. "What's happening?" Vaughn demanded. Quan's face was pale. "The gateway, it's fully active. Something's coming through." The bridge fell silent as a shadowy form began to emerge from the distortion. It was massive, its silhouette unlike anything they had ever seen. And it was headed straight for them. The bridge of the Oberon was plunged into a tense, suffocating silence as the shadow coalesced within the shimmering distortion. The gateway, pulsing with an almost organic rhythm, illuminated the colossal figure emerging from it. The silhouette solidified into a ship, or what the crew assumed was a ship. Its design defied comprehension. Towering spires rose from a dark, chitinous hull that seemed alive, its surface rippling as if it breathed. No lights or visible propulsion marked its surface, yet it glided with eerie grace, dwarfing even the Zalorian fleet. "What in the name of the void is that?" Lieutenant Cross whispered, her voice tinged with awe and dread. Commander Elias Vaughn remained silent, his gaze fixed on the monstrosity. This was no ordinary vessel. It felt ancient, like the ring itself, and carried a presence that seemed to seep into the minds of those who looked upon it. "Cross," Vaughn said finally, his voice steady. "Give me a reading on that thing." Cross's trembling fingers flew over her console. I can't get anything solid, Commander. It's emitting a field. Some kind of energy we've never seen before. It's interfering with our sensors. But," she hesitated. "But what?" Vaughn pressed. "It's alive," Cross said, her words barely above a whisper. "That ship, it's alive." A murmur rippled through the bridge crew. The idea was incomprehensible, yet undeniable, as they stared at the organic undulations of the colossal vessel. "Dr. Quan," Vaughn said, turning to the xenotechnologist, "does this have anything to do with the ring? Is this what the beacon was meant to call?" Quan's face was pale, her eyes locked on the view screen. "I don't know. It matches nothing in the ring's database. But if the builders of this ring created a network, then maybe this is who they were trying to contact or warn us about." Sergeant Lopez, who had joined the bridge crew after their scramble back to the ship, scowled. "Warn us, that's great, so we're the idiots who rang the doorbell on an ancient cosmic predator." "Focus," Vaughn snapped. "Weapons status?" "Operational, but we're low on railgun rounds," the weapons officer reported. "The energy pulse drained a lot of our reserves. Shields are holding at 40%. "Prep what we have," Vaughn ordered. "I want options if this thing becomes hostile." The crew's worst fears were realized moments later. The massive vessel emitted a low-frequency hum that resonated through the Oberon. It wasn't just sound. It was a vibration that seeped into their bones, rattling their very thoughts. "Commander!" Cross shouted, her voice panicked. "The Gadolorian ships are powering up again." Vaughn whipped his head toward the view screen. The once disabled Zalorian fleet was stirring, their engines reigniting as if some unseen force had breathed life into them. But they didn't fire on the Oberon. Instead, their movements became erratic, their ships drifting toward the massive vessel like moths to a flame. "They're not in control," Quan said, horrified. "Look at their trajectories. It's like they're being pulled." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the Zalorian ships drew closer to the alien vessel. The organic surface of the behemoth began to writhe, and tendrils of dark energy lashed out, ensnaring the smaller ships. One by one, the Zalorian vessels disintegrated, their hulls peeling away as though consumed. "Nigh the void," Lopez muttered, his voice trailing off. Quan's console beeped urgently, breaking the spell of dread. "The gateway is destabilizing, Commander. Whatever this thing is, it's draining the ring's energy. If it collapses—" What happens if it collapses?" Vaughn asked, though he already suspected the answer. Quan didn't look up. "A cascading failure. The ring's core will implode, taking everything within this system with it." "Options?" Vaughn demanded, his tone cutting through the panic. "We have one," Quan said. "We can trigger a manual override on the ring's core. If I can upload a shutdown sequence, we might be able to sever the gateway before it destabilizes completely." "What's the catch?" Vaughn asked, knowing there was always a catch. Quan hesitated. "The override has to be done at the source. I'll need to physically interface with the spire in the ring's core chamber, and it's not designed to be shut down. The energy feedback could destroy the ring and everything nearby, including us." "Fantastic," Lopez muttered, "a suicide mission." Bond's jaw tightened. "We don't have a choice. Quan, you'll lead a team back down to the ring. Cross, Lopez, you're with her." "What about the ship?" Cross asked. "I'll handle the Oberon," Vaughn said. "If that thing so much as twitches in our direction, we'll buy you as much time as we can." The dropship roared out of the Oberon's hangar, weaving through the chaos surrounding the ring. The alien vessel loomed ominously, its tendrils still devouring the remnants of the Zalorian fleet. Inside the dropship, Quan worked feverishly on her portable console, refining the shutdown sequence. Lopez checked his weapon for the third time, muttering curses under his breath. Cross piloted the craft, her knuckles white as she gripped the controls. "Obes get the worst jobs?" Lopez asked, trying to lighten the mood. "Because we're good at them," Cross shot back, without missing a beat. Quan didn't join the banter. Her mind was racing, calculating variables, wondering if they were already too late. The dropship landed with a jarring thud in the ring's docking bay. The team disembarked, their boots echoing against the cold metal floor. The once dormant structure was now alive with activity, its halls bathed in a flickering alien glow. "Move fast," Quan urged. "The core chamber's just ahead." As they reached the core, the spire was a whirlwind of light and energy. The glyphs on its surface were no longer static. They shifted and morphed as if alive. The hum of the spire was deafening, reverberating through the chamber like a heartbeat. Quan approached the console, her hands shaking. "This is it. Cover me while I work." Lopez and Cross took defensive positions near the chamber's entrance, their weapons aimed at the corridor behind them. The ring's vibrations were intensifying, and the air felt charged with static. Quan began her upload, her fingers flying over the interface. The alien glyphs resisted her commands, as though the ring itself were fighting her efforts. "Come on," she muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. "Come on." Suddenly the spire emitted a piercing wail, and the lights in the chamber dimmed. The glyphs flared angrily, their patterns shifting into something chaotic. "What's happening?" Lopez shouted. "It's resisting," Quan cried. "The system's trying to override me. I need more time." Back on the Oberon, Vaughn watched helplessly as the alien vessel shifted its attention. Tendrils of energy lashed toward the ring, wrapping around its surface like chains. The gateway expanded further, its edges crackling with unstable energy. "They're accelerating the collapse," Cross's voice crackled over the comm. "Stay focused," Vaughn replied. "You're our only shot." On the bridge, Vaughn turned to his weapons officer. "Target the tendrils, see if we can sever them." The Oberon's railguns fired, their rounds streaking toward the alien vessel. The projectiles struck the tendrils, causing them to shudder and recoil. But for every tendril destroyed, more emerged, each one larger and more menacing. "We can't keep this up," the weapons officer shouted. "Then we'll go down fighting," Vaughn said, his resolve unshaken. In the ring's core chamber, Quan screamed as a surge of energy shot through her console, throwing her back. "Quan!" Cross yelled, rushing to her side. "I'm fine," Quan groaned, forcing herself to her feet. "The sequence is almost complete. I just need—" A deafening roar interrupted her, and the team turned to see a massive figure emerging from the corridor. It was one of the Zalorian elite, an armored behemoth wielding an energy blade that glowed with malevolent intent. Lopez opened fire, his shots pinging off the Zalorian's thick armor. "We've got company." "Hold him off," Quan shouted, returning to the console. Cross joined Lopez, her precision shots targeting the Zalorian's weak points. The alien roared, swinging its blade in a deadly arc. The console beeped, and Quan gasped. "The sequence is ready." "Do it!" Vaughn's voice came over the comm. Quan pressed the final command, and the spire erupted with light. The gateway began to collapse, its edges imploding inward as the ring's core destabilized. "Get out of there," Vaughn ordered. The team sprinted toward the dropship, the Zalorian hot on their heels. Explosions rocked the chamber as the ring's structure began to fail. They barely made it aboard the dropship as the core chamber disintegrated. Cross gunned the engines, the craft shooting out of the docking bay moments before the entire ring collapsed in a blinding burst of energy. The shockwave rippled through space, engulfing the alien vessel. The monstrosity writhed as the wave tore through it, its form disintegrating into fragments. On the Oberon, the crew watched as the alien ship dissolved, its tendrils retracting into nothingness. Cheers erupted across the bridge, but Vaughn remained solemn. "Status?" he asked. "The ring's gone," Cross reported over the comm. "But so is that thing." Vaughn nodded, relief mingling with the weight of what they had unleashed. "We've bought ourselves time," he said, "but this isn't over." As the team returned to the Oberon, the crew knew one thing for certain. Humanity had awakened something far older and more dangerous than the Zalorian Empire. And whatever it was, it wouldn't remain silent for long.